I don't want to be friends with someone who is toxic. The story takes place years ago, during my time in elementary school, spanning from the beginning of 4th grade to the end of 5th grade, a period of about 2 years. At the start of 4th grade, I formed a small friend group consisting of kids aged 10 to 11. We had a designated hangout spot under the solar panels where we'd sit during snack time and spend our lunch breaks together. The group's composition changed frequently, with people joining and leaving, but there were always at least 4 consistent members. One day, a girl began gravitating toward our group. Over the course of 2 weeks, she slowly integrated herself into our dynamic. She had mutual friends with me, including one person who had been my best friend since preschool. This girl, however, had only known my best friend since kindergarten. It quickly became apparent that she harbored a competitive streak, constantly trying to prove that she knew our mutual friend better than I did. She'd initiate challenges like, "Let's see who knows blank the most," or make comments like, "I bet I know her better." I tried to dismiss it, telling her it didn't matter, but the pattern continued. Occasionally, she would attempt to wedge herself between me and my best friend, urging blank to stop talking to me or outright ignore me. This behavior subsided midway through 4th grade, leading me to believe that the rivalry had ended. But I was wrong, very wrong. As time passed, we started to get along better. We exchanged phone numbers and spent countless hours on calls, playing video games together. Despite minor annoyances typical of friends, it seemed like we were getting closer. Unfortunately, her competitive nature resurfaced. She began spreading lies about me and manipulating not only our mutual friends, but also me. This cycle of friendship and conflict persisted for the remainder of 4th grade and all of 5th grade. We'd have falling outs, only to reconcile 2 weeks later as if nothing had happened. I was naive, repeatedly forgiving her and hoping things would improve. During this tumultuous friendship, she confided in me about her troubled past. Her father had been an alcoholic and involved in illegal activities. He was eventually arrested and sentenced to over 15 years in prison. As a result, she grew up with her stepfather, step-siblings, and an abusive mother. She wasn't allowed to see her biological father until she turned 18. She often broke down crying about her situation, both during calls and at school, and I felt a deep sense of sympathy for her. However, there were inconsistencies in her stories. She claimed to self-harm, but I later discovered that she had lied about this for attention. Nevertheless, she frequently expressed thoughts of self-harm, which left me feeling torn between anger and compassion. A few weeks before the end of 4th grade, her behavior took a turn for the worse. She became increasingly aggressive, yelling and cursing at me over minor disagreements. She'd wave her hands in my face whenever she was frustrated or didn't get her way. On one occasion, she made an offensive and racist joke, covering her hands and head in black tape and mockingly saying, "Ha ha ha guys, look, I'm black." It was deeply unsettling, and I couldn't understand why she thought such behavior was acceptable. Eventually, I decided it had enough. I ended our friendship over text, explaining how hurtful her actions had been. She responded with tears and claims of being very hurt, but I stood my ground. Despite cutting ties with her, I often found myself reflecting on the complexities of our relationship. I wondered whether her traumatic past justified her behavior, or if I had been too lenient, allowing myself to be manipulated time and again. Though she was out of my life, the memories lingered, leaving me to question whether the bond we shared was ever genuine or simply a product of circumstance. By the time I moved on to middle school, I had learned to be more cautious about who I trusted. Yet, every now and then, I'd think about her and wonder what became of her. Did she change? Did she find the support she needed to heal? Or did she remain stuck in the same patterns, alienating those around her? The story didn't end there, but rather left an open chapter, one filled with unanswered questions and lingering what-ifs. Perhaps someday our paths will cross again, or perhaps this was simply a lesson in growth and resilience, a reminder that even the most complicated friendships can shape us in ways we never expected. As the days turned into weeks and summer gave way to the start of 6th grade, I found myself in a new environment with new faces and fresh opportunities to redefine myself. Middle school was supposed to be a clean slate, a chance to leave behind the messy entanglements of elementary school and start anew. But as life would have it, the remnants of the past have a way of lingering, resurfacing when you least expect it. By this time, I'd made a conscious decision to focus on building healthier friendships. I told myself I'd learned from my experiences with her, yet there was a strange emptiness I couldn't quite shake. As toxic as that friendship had been, it had also been a constant presence in my life, a gravitational pull I had grown accustomed to. Without it, there was a void, one I struggled to fill. The first few weeks of middle school were a whirlwind. New schedules, new teachers, and navigating the unfamiliar layout of the school kept me occupied. I gravitated toward a small group of classmates, easing into conversations and feeling out potential friendships. For the first time in a while, I felt like I was in control. But even then, there were echoes of her in the back of my mind. I caught myself hesitating before opening up, questioning whether my new friends could be trusted. Would they turn on me too? Would they manipulate me the way she had? One day, during lunch, I overheard a snippet of conversation that made my stomach drop. Someone mentioned her name. It was a different grade, a different school, but the familiarity of her name, her presence, felt like a ghost haunting the edges of my newfound peace. I resisted the urge to ask about her, to satisfy the curiosity gnawing at me. What was she doing now? Did she feel the same sense of loss that I did? Or had she moved on without a second thought? As the semester progressed, I threw myself into extracurricular activities, art club, the school newspaper, and even a spot on the junior debate team. These outlets gave me purpose and a way to channel the lingering frustrations I couldn't quite articulate. But even as I made progress, there were moments when the past crept in. Memories of our late night calls, her tears, and the unrelenting cycle of reconciliation and conflict played in my mind like a broken record. I started writing about it in my journal, pouring out my confusion and frustration, hoping that putting it into words would help me understand. One particular entry stands out. Why do I keep thinking about her? She was mean, manipulative, and hurtful. But there were good moments too. Is it okay to miss someone who hurts you? I'd stare at the page, my pen hovering, unsure of the answer. It wasn't until a class project in English that the complexity of my feelings began to unravel. Our assignment was to write about a relationship that had impacted us deeply, for better or worse. I wrestled with whether to write about her. Would it dredge up feelings I'd worked so hard to suppress? Or would it finally help me make sense of the mess? I decided to go for it. I wrote about the early days of our friendship, the shared laughter, the inside jokes, and the bond that had felt unbreakable at the time. Then I delved into the darker moments, the lies, the manipulation, the way she'd turn others against me and leave me questioning my worth. I didn't hold back, laying bare the confusion, anger, and sadness that had defined those years. When I finished, I felt a strange mix of relief and unease. Reliving it all had been cathartic, but it also left me feeling raw and exposed. When the time came to share our essays in small groups, I hesitated. What if my classmates judged me for staying in such a toxic friendship? What if they couldn't understand why I kept going back to her? But as I read my essay aloud, something unexpected happened. Instead of judgment, I was met with nods of understanding and empathy. One classmate shared her own story of a friendship that had turned sour. Another admitted to struggling with boundaries and forgiveness. For the first time, I realized I wasn't alone. My experience, as painful as it had been, was not unique. Encouraged by this newfound sense of solidarity, I began to open up more with my new friends. I told them about my hesitations, my fears of being hurt again. To my surprise, they listened without judgment, offering reassurances and sharing their own vulnerabilities. Slowly but surely, I started to trust again. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt, but I began to see the possibility of building relationships based on mutual respect and kindness. But just as I started to find my footing, an unexpected twist threw me off balance. One afternoon, while scrolling through social media, I came across her profile. My heart skipped a beat. It had been over a year since we last spoke, and yet there she was, smiling in a group photo with people I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on her profile. Her posts painted a picture of someone who had moved on, someone thriving in her own way. There were photos of her at events, captions filled with inside jokes, and comments from what seemed to be a new circle of friends. Part of me wanted to reach out to see if she'd changed or if she still thought about our friendship. But another part of me held back, wary of reopening old wounds. What if she hadn't changed? What if reconnecting only brought back the pain he'd worked so hard to leave behind? I spent the next few days wrestling with these questions, unsure of what to do. The idea of closure was tempting, but I wasn't sure if it was truly possible. Maybe some stories don't have neat endings. Maybe the best I could hope for was to make peace with the past and focus on the present. Even as I tried to move forward, the shadow of that friendship loomed large, a reminder of the complexities of human connection. It wasn't just about her, it was about what I'd learned about myself, my resilience, my capacity for forgiveness, and my determination to grow. Though the chapter with her felt unfinished, it had become a part of my story, shaping the person I was becoming. And for now, that was enough. Weeks passed, and life carried on with its usual rhythm. Schoolwork, extracurricular activities, and the ebb and flow of daily routines kept me occupied, but the thought of her still lingered in the quieter moments. It wasn't an all-consuming presence anymore, but more like a faint echo that refused to fade completely. I began to accept that she had left a mark on me, for better or worse, and that maybe this was something it'd carry with me indefinitely. One day, during a particularly uneventful afternoon, I found myself revisiting my journal. Flipping through the pages, I stumbled upon an entry I'd written about her shortly after our friendship had ended. The words were raw and filled with frustration, but there was also a sense of yearning, a desperate hope that things could have been different. It was strange, seeing my own thoughts from what felt like a lifetime ago. I wondered if she had ever done something similar, reflecting on our friendship and its abrupt end. Did she feel any regret? Or had she moved on without a second thought? As I pondered these questions, something unexpected happened. My phone buzzed with a notification, and when I checked, it was a message from her. It was short and simple. "Hey, it's been a while. How have you been?" My heart raced as I stared at the screen. A flood of emotions washed over me: confusion, anxiety, and surprisingly, a flicker of hope. I hadn't anticipated hearing from her again, and now that I had, I wasn't sure how to respond. Should I ignore her? Confront her about everything that had happened? Or should I try to approach this with an open mind, giving her the benefit of the doubt? After what felt like an eternity, I typed out a cautious reply. "Hey, I've been good. How about you?" Her response came quickly, as though she'd been waiting for me to reply. "I've been okay. I just wanted to reach out. I know we didn't end things on the best terms, but I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I miss our friendship." I sat with her words for a while, unsure of how to process them. Part of me wanted to believe her, to hope that she had changed, and that maybe we could find a way to rebuild what we had lost. But another part of me was wary, remembering all the times I had let her back into my life, only to be hurt again. I decided to be honest. "I miss parts of it too," I wrote, "but I'm not sure if we can go back to how things were. A lot happened, and it's hard for me to forget some of it." Her reply was more heartfelt than I expected. "I know, and I don't blame you for feeling that way. I've been doing a lot of thinking about the past, and I realize now how much I messed up. I'm really sorry for the way I treated you. You didn't deserve any of it. It was the apology I had wanted for so long. Yet hearing it now didn't bring the closure I thought it would. Instead, it left me with more questions. Was she genuinely sorry? Or was this another instance of her trying to manipulate me? I wanted to believe she was sincere, but trust wasn't something I could give freely anymore, not with her. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "It means a lot, but I need some time to think about this. I've worked really hard to move on, and I'm not sure if revisiting the past is the right thing for me right now." She responded with understanding. Take all the time you need. I just wanted to let you know that I'm here if you ever want to talk. No pressure. After that, our conversation ended, and I was left to grapple with a mix of emotions. Her message had stirred up memories I'd tried to bury, but it also gave me a sense of clarity. I realized that forgiveness wasn't something I could rush. It was a process, one that required time and introspection. Over the next few weeks, I continued to focus on myself and my new friendships. I found solace in the small moments, laughing with my friends during lunch, acing a difficult test, and spending quiet evenings lost in my favorite books. These moments reminded me that life was moving forward, even if parts of my past still lingered in the background. But the memory of her message stayed with me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was unfinished business between us, a chapter of my life that hadn't yet reached its conclusion. I wondered if responding to her would bring me the closure I sought, or if it would only reopen old wounds. The uncertainty was daunting, but I knew I couldn't ignore it forever. One day, during a quiet afternoon, I decided to revisit our conversation. I read through her messages again, looking for any signs of manipulation or insincerity. But this time, I also looked for something else, evidence of growth, of genuine remorse. And as I reread her words, I realized there was a part of me that wanted to believe her. Maybe she had changed. Maybe she truly did regret the way she had treated me. I picked up my phone and began typing a message. I've been thinking about what you said. I'm not sure if I'm ready to fully forgive and forget, but I'm open to having a conversation. Maybe we can figure out where we stand. As I hit send, I felt a mixture of apprehension and relief. I didn't know what the future held, but I was willing to take the first step toward finding out. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope, not just for the possibility of mending old wounds, but for the growth and healing that might come from facing the past head-on. What lay ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, one step at a time. The weeks following our tentative conversation were filled with introspection. I kept replaying her words in my mind, wondering if this time would be different, or if I was walking back into a cycle that had already drained so much from me. My new friendships had given me stability, but this lingering thread of the past kept tugging at me, demanding resolution. After much deliberation, I decided to meet her in person. Texts felt too impersonal for a conversation this significant, and I needed to see her face to face, to gauge her sincerity and find closure, whether that meant rebuilding a bridge or letting it burn, for good. I sent her a message suggesting we meet at a local park one Saturday afternoon. She agreed without hesitation. The day arrived, and as I walked to the park, my stomach churned with a mix of anticipation and dread. When I spotted her sitting on a bench under the shade of an old oak tree, it felt surreal. She looked different, a little older, a little calmer, but still unmistakably her. I approached slowly, and when she saw me, she stood and gave a small, tentative wave. "Hey," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Hey," I replied, sitting down beside her. There was a moment of silence as we both searched for the right words to begin. "Thank you for coming," she said finally. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm really glad you're here." I nodded, still unsure of how to respond. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last talked. I've been trying to work on myself, to understand why I acted the way I did. I've realized that I hurt a lot of people, and am really sorry for the way I treated you. You were such a good friend to me, and I took that for granted." Her words felt genuine, but I couldn't ignore the scars left by our past. "I appreciate you saying that," I said carefully, "but it's hard for me to just forget everything that happened. You hurt me a lot, and it's taken me a long time to move on." She nodded, her expression filled with regret. "I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. I just wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry. I'm not here to ask for anything. I just needed to say it." For the first time, I saw her in a different light. She wasn't the manipulative, competitive person I had known before. She was someone trying to make amends, someone grappling with her own mistakes and flaws. It didn't erase the pain she'd caused, but it made me see that she, too, was human, imperfect, and capable of change. I'm glad you're working on yourself, I said, and I hope you keep going. But I think it's best if we don't try to be friends again. There's just too much history, and I need to focus on the relationships in my life that are healthy and supportive. She looked down at her hands, nodding slowly. I understand. I just want you to be happy. That's all I ever wanted, even if I didn't show it. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history hanging in the air. Then she stood up and offered a small, bittersweet smile. Thank you for giving me this chance to apologize, she said. I'll always be grateful for the time we had, even if it didn't end the way I hoped. I stood as well, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. Take care of yourself, I said. With that, she walked away, leaving me alone under the oak tree. I watched her disappear into the distance, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of closure. It wasn't the perfect ending, but it was an ending nonetheless. As I walked home, I thought about everything we'd been through, the highs, the lows, the moments that had defined my childhood. She had taught me a lot, not just about friendship, but about myself. It had learned the importance of setting boundaries, of recognizing my own worth, and of letting go when something no longer served me. That chapter of my life was finally closed. It wasn't tied up with a neat little bow, but it was over, and that was enough. I was ready to move forward, carrying the lessons I'd learned and leaving the pain behind. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt free to walk it without looking back.